You have been doing the math. In your head. Late at night. On your phone while you wait in line somewhere. What would it take? What income would you need? What would the monthly payment actually be? And somewhere in the middle of that math, something shifted. The number you came up with did not feel possible. Not impossible the way a private jet feels impossible. Impossible the way a regular life goal is suddenly out of reach for regular people. And you are not sure when that happened. When the dream of owning a home stopped being a matter of saving up and started being a matter of something much harder to solve. Today, I am going to do the math with you. Out loud. All of it. The real numbers. The honest numbers. Not the numbers that make you feel better. The numbers that tell you exactly where you actually stand. And at the end of this episode, you are going to know 3 things. Exactly what income it takes to afford a $500,000 home in 2026. Why most Americans cannot get there even if they try. And what the people who are actually doing it are doing differently. Let me tell you about Jordan. Jordan is 34 years old. She lives in Columbus, Ohio. She has been renting for 9 years. She earns $78,000 a year, and her partner earns $61,000. Together, they bring home about $139,000 annually. They have been saving for a down payment for 3 years. They have $22,000 set aside. Last March, they found a house they loved. $500,000. 3 bedrooms. Good neighborhood. Good schools. The kind of house they had been picturing. They sat down to run the numbers. And the numbers told them no. We will come back to Jordan and what the numbers actually said. But first, I need to show you the full picture of what is happening in the American housing market right now. Because most people are doing this math with the wrong information. Owning a home used to be the starting point of the American dream. Now it has become the finish line for a race most people cannot afford to enter. That is not from a celebrity or a politician. That came from a housing economist describing the current market in simple terms. And the data backs it up completely. Here is where we are right now. Housing data shows the national median home price in the third quarter of 2025 was $426,800. That is the median. Half of all homes cost more than that. In 1985, the median American home cost $82,800. The median household income that year was $23,620. The home was roughly 3.5 times the annual income. That ratio mattered. It made the math possible. In 2025, the median home costs 5 times the median household income. 5 times. And it is getting worse. Researchers at Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies found that home prices have surged to 5 times the median income, nearing historic highs. In 1985, the ratio was 3.5. In 2019, it was 4.1. Today, it is 5.1. The gap is widening. Slowly, but consistently. Every year, and incomes are not keeping up. Since 1985, median household income rose roughly 255%. In that same period, median home prices surged more than 415%. The prices are winning. By a wide margin. That is the background. Now let us talk about the $500,000 house specifically, because this is where the math gets brutal. Mortgage data from 2026 shows that to afford a $500,000 home today, most buyers need to earn between $120,000 and $165,000 per year. Let me show you exactly where that number comes from. Today's 30-year fixed mortgage rate is approximately 6.57%. If you put 20% down on a $500,000 home, your loan is $400,000. Your principal and interest payment alone is about $2,554 per month. Then add property taxes. In most markets, that adds roughly $500 to $800 per month depending on the state. Then add homeowners insurance. Another $100 to $200 per month. If you put less than 20% down, you add private mortgage insurance. Another $100 to $200 per month. Total monthly housing cost for a $500,000 home in 2026. Somewhere between $3,100 and $3,800 per month. That is just for the house. Before utilities, before maintenance, before the things that break. Mortgage lenders use a rule called the 28% guideline. Your total housing payment should not exceed 28% of your gross monthly income. So if your housing payment is $3,500 per month, lenders want to see gross monthly income of at least $12,500. That is $150,000 per year. $150,000 per year. The median household income in the United States is approximately $83,150. The math is not close. To afford the average $500,000 home, you need to earn nearly twice the median American income. And that is before student loans, before car payments, before credit card debt, before any of the other financial obligations that most real households carry. If this math is landing harder than you expected, subscribe right now. Hit the bell, because what comes next is the part nobody explains, and it is the part that changes everything. Stay here. There is another problem sitting right at the beginning of this process. Before the mortgage, before the monthly payment, before any of the math we just did. The down payment. 20% of $500,000 is $100,000. $100,000. For someone earning the national median income of $83,000, saving $100,000 while paying rent, while paying other bills, while living a normal life, is not a 3-year project, it is closer to a 10-year project, maybe longer. Federal data from 2025 shows the most commonly cited barriers to homeownership among renters were, first, inability to afford a down payment, and second, inability to qualify for a mortgage. Those are the two things you need most. And they are the two things that are hardest to get. And here's the part that makes this even harder to talk about. If you do not have the 20% down payment, you can still buy with 10% or 5% or even 3.5% through certain programs. But every dollar less you put down increases your monthly payment. It adds private mortgage insurance. It means more interest over the life of the loan. It means that $100,000 purchase price advantage you tried to get by putting less down comes at a real monthly cost. The numbers on a $500,000 home with zero down are stark. Your monthly principal and interest payment alone is over $3,100. The total interest you will pay over 30 years at today's rates exceeds $620,000. You will pay more in interest than the original price of the house. Let that sit for a moment. You buy a $500,000 house. Over 30 years, you pay back more than $1,100,000. The house cost $500,000. You pay more than double. That is not a predatory lender. That is just the math of borrowing money at 6.5% for 30 years. Let me come back to Jordan. She and her partner, combined, earn $139,000 per year. That sounds like it should be enough. And in a different housing market, it might be. But they also have student loans. She has $14,000 left on hers. He has $22,000. They have one car payment. And they have a small amount of credit card debt they have been paying down steadily. When the mortgage lender ran their full debt-to-income ratio, the combined monthly debt payments plus the projected mortgage payment pushed them above the standard 43% back-end limit that most conventional lenders prefer. They did not get a no. They got a not yet. Pay down more debt first. Save a larger down payment. Come back in 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months in a market where home prices have historically risen faster than the rate at which most households can save. Jordan told me that the part that hurt most was not being told no. It was realizing that they were doing everything right. 2 incomes. Consistent saving. Responsible spending. And it still was not enough. She said, I always thought if I worked hard enough, the math would eventually work out. I am starting to wonder if the math is just broken. That sentence deserves to sit there for a second. Because Jordan is not wrong about the math. Housing affordability research shows households earning $100,000 have seen the share of affordable home listings contract from 65% of listings in 2019 to 37% in 2025. 65% down to 37%. In 6 years, for households earning $75,000, which includes a lot of teachers, nurses, and trades workers, only 21% of listings are affordable. Down from 49% in 2019. Half the options. In less than a decade, and the median age of the first-time homebuyer in the United States is now 40 years old. In the 1980s, it was 29. People are waiting 11 more years to buy their first home. Not because they want to wait. Because the math is forcing them to. There is another number here that I want you to hold in your mind as we go forward. In 1985, the home price to income ratio was 3.5. That means a typical family could buy a home at about 3.5 times their annual household income. Today, that ratio is 5.1. And in expensive markets, it is dramatically worse. Los Angeles, 10.8 times income. San Francisco, 10.5. New York, 7.3. Incomes would need to jump by 58% to restore the affordability ratio that buyers in 1990 enjoyed. 58%. That is not a gap you close by getting a raise or cutting back on lattes. So, who is actually buying $500,000 homes in 2026? The honest answer is a narrower group of people than most financial media acknowledges. The first group is dual-income households earning $150,000 or more, with limited debt and a solid down payment. 2 professional salaries built over years, the math works for them. The second group gets the least attention but does the most buying. They had equity from a previous home. They did not save to the down payment from scratch. They got there because they bought earlier in a market that rewarded them. The third group had family help. A gift toward the down payment. An inheritance. A transfer of generational wealth that never shows up in any income figure but makes all the difference in the lender's office. The fourth group is stretching. Buying at the edge of what they can afford. Counting on future raises, on appreciation, on nothing going wrong. Some of them will be fine, some of them will not. And the fifth group is waiting. Renting longer. Saving harder. Hoping the math moves in their direction before the market moves further away. Jordan is in scenario 5 right now. She is not giving up. She is recalibrating. But here is something Jordan told me that she learned from her coworker Elena. Elena bought a $500,000 home 2 years ago. Same city, same income, same mark. Jordan was sitting next to her at work when it happened. She watched Elena go through the process. She watched it look almost easy. She asked Elena what she had done differently. Elena said, I spent my late 20s paying down student loans aggressively instead of upgrading my lifestyle. I treated my credit score like a project for 3 years. When I walked into the lender's office, my debt-to-income ratio was already clean. I did not walk in hoping the numbers would work. I had already made the numbers work before I walked in. Elena did not have a higher income than Jordan. She did not get lucky in the market. She did not have family money. She had spent 5 years before she needed a mortgage making decisions that most people do not make because they do not yet know they will need them. That is the difference between reacting to the market and being ready for it. Jordan is getting there. Elena was already there. Elena did not have a higher income. She just started earlier. The important thing to understand about these 5 scenarios is that most of the buyers in scenarios 1 through 3 had something the buyers in scenario 4 and 5 do not. A head start. They either bought earlier, before prices hit their current level, or they inherited financial advantages that made the starting line closer. Or they had dual incomes and limited debt at exactly the right time. Federal Reserve data shows the 26.5 percentage point income gap between the median American income and the income needed to comfortably buy a median-priced home is not just the largest gap in recent history. It is growing. And the households most affected are not the lowest income households. They are the middle ones. The ones who earn enough to feel like homeownership should be within reach, but not enough to actually get there. That gap has a name. Housing economists call it the missing middle. The people who earn too much to qualify for housing assistance and too little to afford the market. Jordan is in the missing middle. So are a lot of people watching this right now. And here is the thing about the missing middle that nobody says clearly enough. It is not a temporary problem. Realtor.com research shows the United States currently faces a deficit of over 4 million homes. Supply is not meeting demand. And when supply does not meet demand over years and years, prices do not come back down to meet income. Income has to climb to meet prices. Which is exactly the race that most households are losing. Here is what the data shows about what actually moves the needle. First, location. A $500,000 home in San Francisco buys you something very different from a $500,000 home in Columbus, Ohio, or Raleigh, North Carolina, or Indianapolis, Indiana. The income requirement follows the same logic, but the home it gets you does not. People who are successfully buying in this market are often buying in markets that are not the most obvious choice. Not the coastal city where they grew up imagining they would live. A different city, often inland, often Midwest or South, where the same $500,000 goes dramatically further. Housing market data shows home prices in major Midwestern cities have remained meaningfully below the national median, while wage growth in those markets has been relatively healthy. The buyers winning in this market are often the ones who made a geographic decision before they made a financial one. Second, debt. The debt-to-income calculation is where most buyers who are close, but not quite there, get stuck. Jordan was close. What she needed was not more income. What she needed was less debt. Every $100 per month she can eliminate from her existing debt obligations improves her debt-to-income ratio in a way that can meaningfully change what she qualifies for. Paying off her smallest student loan first would free up a monthly minimum payment and change her lender's calculation. Not dramatically, but enough to matter. Third, credit score. Mortgage data shows the difference between a credit score of 620 and a credit score of 740 is roughly $72,000 in additional interest paid over the life of a $500,000 loan. $72,000. From a 3-digit number. The credit score is not a formality. It is one of the most financially significant numbers in the home buying process. Fourth, time. This is the one nobody wants to hear. But it is consistently true. The buyers who are making it work are often the ones who started building the financial profile they would need before they needed it. Who treated the credit score as something to manage years before they applied. Who started saving for a down payment when a home still felt abstract. Who paid down student loans aggressively, not because they were going to buy immediately, but because they knew it would matter when they did. The $500,000 home does not reward urgency. It rewards preparation. Jordan spent the 12 months after the mortgage lender said not yet doing 4 specific things. She and her partner put every extra dollar toward the student loans. They paid off her $14,000 completely. They reduced his from $22,000 to $11,000. She called her credit card company and asked for a credit limit increase on her oldest card, which improved her credit utilization ratio without increasing her actual spending. She opened a high-yield savings account for the down payment fund, earning 4% instead of the 0.4% the standard savings account paid. Over a year, on $22,000, that difference was meaningful. And they made one geographic decision. They expanded their search area. Not out of the city entirely, but from the tight ring of neighborhoods they had been looking at to a slightly wider range. And in that wider range, they found a home at $475,000 in a neighborhood they had not considered that they actually liked more than the original one. They closed on that home 4 months ago. Not because the market became easier, because they made it possible despite the market. You have been doing the math. And the math is brutal. A $500,000 home requires roughly $150,000 in household income, 20% down or a significantly higher monthly payment, limited existing debt, and a strong credit profile. Most American households do not check all 4 of those boxes right now. That is not their failure. That is a market where home prices have grown at nearly twice the rate of incomes for 4 decades. Where the home price to income ratio has gone from 3.5 to 5.1. Where the median first-time buyer is now 40 years old. But here is what I want you to take from this. Jordan's first number was no. Her second number was yes. What changed in 12 months was not the market. It was her preparation. It was the debt she eliminated, the credit score she improved, the down payment she grew, the geographic assumptions she let go of. The market is hard. It is genuinely hard, not solvable with discipline hard, structurally hard. But within that hardness, there are decisions that move the needle. And the people who are buying are almost always the ones who made those decisions before they needed them. And here is something that does not get said enough. The people struggling most with this right now are not people who made bad decisions. They are people who made completely normal decisions at a time when normal decisions were enough. They went to school, they got good jobs, they saved what they could, they lived reasonably, and then the market moved in ways that normal decisions could not keep up with. That is not a personal failure, that is a structural shift. And acknowledging that does not mean giving up. It means understanding what you are actually working against so you can make the decisions that actually move the math. You know the math now. You know the number. And you know what Jordan did. What you do next is entirely yours. If this episode gave you something real to work with, share it with someone who is doing that same late-night math right now. Subscribe before you go, because the next episode is going to show you exactly how to build the financial profile that makes a lender say yes, step by step, starting with your credit score. See you in the next one.